You're listening to Machine Learning That Works, a podcast hosted by Neptune AI. Hi, I'm Jakub Chakon, Senior Data Scientist at Neptune AI, and today I will be talking to Vladimir Rybakov. Vladimir is a head of data science at WaveAccess, and we will be talking about how he got there and what you, me, and everyone else can learn from it. Without further ado, my interview with Vladimir Rybakov. How's it going? Hi, Vladimir.
Hi, everyone. It's great. Well, I'm super happy. I'm glad that you asked me to do this. It's a great opportunity to share some experience because I strongly believe that there are some things that people need to know beforehand if they want to pursue something like being the head of a department or something like this. There are definitely some pitfalls.
Yeah, we're gonna get to those for sure in a moment. But I think it's best if we start with a few words about what you folks at WaveAccess are doing. Like what are typical sort of projects that you're doing, and if you can tell me a bit about that and a bit about the team that you're running, that would be super awesome. Just to give that context.
Actually, WaveAccess is quite a big company. We have over 450 people right now. It's mostly we do custom development, software development for our clients. If we're talking specifically about our data science team, so right now, I think it's about 10 people who do data science, machine learning, like full-time, full scale, and maybe about 30, 40 people that participate in projects that we do in terms of back-end development, front-end development, testing, marketing, and stuff like that. Maybe even more. Maybe 50, 60 on different projects. So yeah, but the core data science team is about 10 people. And the projects, I cannot actually specify any subject field that we focus on because we actually take all sorts of projects in text mining and computer vision, in forecasting and just data analysis. So basically everything.
So like across the board, everything. But are you doing a lot on the side of like those reinforcement learning? Try to apply that, or is there any particular field that you feel that is the most interesting to you folks?
In terms of reinforcement learning, it's very specific, and quite few companies actually have the necessity, and even fewer have the resources. Like not everybody can implement that, and not everybody needs that. So
I agree, exactly.
I think the most dominant direction that we see right now is applying machine learning and data science to CRM systems. So there are a lot of leads, a lot of questions about applying that, because working with customer data, especially if it's like some huge amounts, it can be very costly for the companies, because if it's done manually, it's prone to human mistakes and something got mixed up and stuff like that. So it's one huge direction. The other one is quite a lot of text mining, I think, and it's very close to the customer to CRM systems, because there is a lot of text data, obviously, such as like requests or something, or feedbacks. So text mining. And there is also actually a lot of computer vision projects.
For sure.
Yeah, but the biggest project right now we have is related to computer vision, and it's related to satellite image analysis, where we search for deforestation and fields that are not being used properly. So for example, somebody got a field to grow some crops there, but he doesn't use them. It's there are a lot of bushes, trees there, and if something like this happens, they get a fine. But it's very hard to keep track of everything. The same goes for the forests. As you know, Russia is quite a big country, and if you try to search all of those illegal deforestations manually, just by going there by car or something like that, it can take a lot of time, and you will probably not find everything. So it's also a big problem. I know that there are some systems that were already developed in this field, but we have some specifics because of which we had to develop it ourselves from scratch.
Yeah, that's what I often find where you have it seems that at the very first scratch, it seems that there are solutions for stuff, but then you actually try and use them, and it turns out that you have to build it anyway. So a lot of the times that's the case, at least from my experience. I don't know if that's the case with you as well.
Yeah, and I think the reason for this is because a lot of times when something is published and put into open access, like in my experience, about 60-70% is actually not very useful, and the results were cherry-picked just to make a good impression. Yeah, and the good stuff, the real stuff, it is usually not published.
That's true.
Yeah,
no, that's true. But what I meant was sometimes you even have companies working on a particular in particular domains and creating products, and those products, oftentimes it seems that you still have to build something around it, or you still have to extend it, etc. So that's sort of
yeah, it's also the case. It's for the remaining 30%.
I see that. Awesome. All right. So I think I have a pretty good view of of what you're working on, and I'd like to or where you work, and what is the team? What's the context? I want to talk and throughout this interview, I want to focus on you. So I want to talk a bit about your path, to head of data science at WaveAccess. Like, can you tell me a bit more about that? Starting with educational background, and then how did you end up here?
Yeah, funny enough that I actually got this question asked before quite a few times, because I have this LinkedIn page, and there you can see how long I was working in this field, and I've been head of data science, I think, for 2 or 3 years, I think, right now. And quite a few people just randomly wrote me and asked me how did this happen? How was I able to become head of data science so fast? But okay, we'll get to that. You said my background. I'm actually a mathematician. I started studying physics, but then I dropped out from that direction, and I reapplied to, well, you can say it's like practical mathematics. A lot of like how to control different systems in a classical way. So a lot of equations, theory of a lot of theory in terms of differential equations and stuff like that. I won't go into. It brings a lot of memories.
Good ones or bad ones?
Yeah, but there actually was a subject, I think on the 4th year of my education, it was about artificial intelligence. It wasn't a main subject at all. It was very close to a side project for all of the students, but I really got interested in it. And I just started working with a professor. I got a couple of grants, and I graduated with my both bachelor's and master's degrees in this field, in the field of data science. Then I tried, I think for a year I worked as just a developer in a company. I really didn't like there, and I dropped out again. Yeah, so actually, I think it's there is a pattern there.
What didn't you like about it? What didn't you like about software development as is?
I'm not against software development in general, but it's just the company I was working on was really, really old-fashioned, and it was ship systems development, so it had to be super robust. And what this means is that all of the things we used, they were quite old, but super prone to mistakes.
Error-proof, like nothing.
Error-proof, so nothing could go wrong. But it was really dull, and I didn't see myself growing there at all.
Got it.
Yeah, so I dropped out, and I found for quite a while I worked as a freelancer. Mm-hmm. Again, now as a data scientist, freelancer, it's not a very common direction, I think, right now. Because,
that is true.
Yeah, I was working alone. It was quite hard because I didn't actually have anyone to ask any advice or something. And it was quite a long time ago, so it was 6 years ago. And even though it doesn't seem that it's a long time, but actually 6 years ago, the amount of people in data science and the resources and stuff like that, the libraries, they were ages behind what we have right now. So
those are the good old piano days.
Yeah, yeah. So I did data science on Java back then.
Oh,
yeah. So it was a very funny project where I had to classify the person's personality, judging by their
face.
Yeah, by their face and the shape of their ears.
Oh, I sounds like a tricky and biased project.
But... Yeah, it was. But I tried to use everything I could to just get some experience. But then again, I dropped out of the project. There were some problems with client in terms of money, in terms of, it's a usual thing that you say that the system needs some adjustments, new data and stuff like that. And the client says, do it
just figure it out.
Yeah, just figure it out how to use what you have and solve everything. So yeah, I dropped out. Actually, I didn't even get paid everything that they owed me, but it was like a barter. I didn't get paid the last 1,000 euros, I think they owed me, but they signed an agreement that they won't bother me on the system in the future.
Oh, that's a good. So you got out scot-free, it could have come back to haunt you. yeah.
So I think it was a good agreement. So I was happy with that. And then I started just searching for a new job. I was searching again as a developer, and I wasn't too successful because I was already 25 years old, I think. And I didn't have a ton of experience in programming. I wasn't middle or senior developer, as some people are.
Were at that age.
You were at that age, yeah. And it was very hard. I was searching for 3 months, I think, without any good results. And then I figured, okay, I'll try to find another job as a data scientist, as an algorithmist. And then the interesting stuff began to happen, yeah. So eventually I had this 2 offers from Electrolux and from WaveAccess. Mm-hmm. Initially I was gonna accept the Electrolux offer, but then I thought that I never liked working in huge companies, like this corporate monsters with a lot of bureaucracy and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, well, if I go there, I will be just like nobody for quite a long time. And I stayed in WaveAccess because of the opportunities I saw there. Back then, I think it was just a little over 100 people there. And I began working as an algorithmist, not even as a data scientist. I worked as an algorithmist. My main job was to...
I have to say that you're the only person I know that had this position. Algorithm. It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, so what I had to do is to take the algorithms from R in a bioscience field. In the bioscience field, there was a lot of graphs there, and I wrote them on Java just because it was so much faster. I actually had some cases when an algorithm on R was working like for a week, and my algorithm on Java, it worked for a couple of hours.
Got it. Yeah. No, that's like I think a lot changed in the our ecosystem now, and a lot of things are running on C++ under the hood, and they've changed a ton in that regard. But yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, but it's reputation. I got enough from R, so
I know.
And at some point, I just figured that I just went to my CTO and I told him, okay, I know data science a little bit. Are there any projects in our company? And he said, well, not really. And in some time, his name is Alexander Azarev, by the way. And this is also, I will get back to that, the importance of having a good boss it's really important. So in some time, he just came back to me and said, okay, so this is your chance. There's this project, a small project for this huge company, and we need to make them like this proof of concept. And I worked for a bit. I did not write on Python before that. And he just came to me, okay, you need to do this stuff in a week on Python. And I never saw this language in my life. I spent quite a lot of...
What did you do? Did you call Java from Python?
No, I wrote everything on Python. I just opened a gazillion of websites and tutorials on how to write.
Sounds like a busy but important week.
Yeah, it was really busy. And the first 2 years in this field were actually very similar because at that point I was the only one in our company. Again, there was nobody to ask any advice from. And then we had this first huge project from a company to predict the routes of ships, how they will travel in the next 15 minutes. At that point, I was allowed to hire somebody to help me with that project, and now we had 2 people. But still, you understand, there is a huge project, and if somebody gets sick or something, there is no backup. I still remember that time when we had to show a demo to our customer, and we were really struggling to deal with their data, and I spent like 40 hours in my office without sleep, without going home, just to deliver it in time.
Oh man.
And then just there were more people, and by this time it's 10 people. So as you can guess, it's much easier to have some backup if somebody gets sick or has vacation. It's much easier to find
normal stuff, but it happens. It's important.
Yeah, and so this is generally the path I took. I just saw an opportunity. I dropped out of everything that didn't seem good enough for me. And when I had an opportunity, when I was given an opportunity, I just grabbed it. And well, I must say that if some of the people listening are pursuing this to become a head of data science, to become a CTO, you need to understand that it won't come easy, because you will have to sacrifice a lot of your personal time, maybe even a lot of your personal health, for at least at some point. Right now, it's much easier, to be honest, in terms of free time. I am very busy, but at least I'm not staying awake like half the week at nights.
Got it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about like your how it is now, like your typical typical day and things that you typically do. Like maybe you have this in your head, this percentage wise. Like this time maybe I do X% in meetings, X% at Y% coding, etc. So like. Tell us a bit more about how does your average day look
like? It's definitely not as I imagined it when I was starting. So most of it, as I said, it is meetings.
So what did you imagine?
Well,
before, what had you?
So what I imagined is that I was going to just sit with my cup of coffee and like come up with all of those crazy ideas, and the people who are working with me will test those concepts, and I will look at them, analyze them. This is true, but it's just a small percentage of all of that stuff. There is definitely. I did not realize how much additional administration work needs to be done in terms of planning, in terms of budgeting, like managing the team, presenting your results, and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of my time, it actually goes to the meetings where I listen what the teams they do their projects, try to figure out whether it's okay or something needs to be done. And then there are meetings where I talk with the clients and I tell them what we have done, or at the end of the projects I give presentations. There is also I work a lot of time with marketing and sales teams because they need to know all the latest stuff we did.
Achieve, so that they can sell and present that to new clients.
Give them additional information on the projects, what they should highlight, what's really cool, because while they do a great job, but of course they cannot understand all the technical details, so they cannot do it on their own. And also there is like this publicity side. So again, so if you're like not a company guy who likes a lot of attention, head of data science and our CTO is probably not something that you should pursue, because it supposes a lot of publicity. You will have to talk a lot with the clients. You will have to talk a lot with the teams, and most likely you will have to give some speeches, some interviews. And if you do not feel comfortable in these conditions, you either need to work on it or maybe find something else, because it can be very frustrating for some people to have a lot of attention drawn to them. So this is also something you need to remember. But
would you say that those things that you mentioned now, the ability to communicate your your results, or communicate problems to both clients and internally, are would you say that this is in your opinion the key key skill that you think people?
One of them. Definitely one of them. I think the most important skill that you need to have, it's not even in data science. It's if you want to lead any team, as a leader, you always need to have like this backup plan. If something goes wrong, you are the one who needs to tell everybody else how we can fix it. Because if it doesn't mean that others don't need to think of some solutions. But if nobody else has them, then you just
gotta have them.
You gotta have them, because if not you, then who? And this just what I'm talking about. You need to be a really good problem solver. You need to have the ability to solve problems that you do not even understand fully, as it often happens in data science. There are a lot of subject fields, and even if a lot of times, like a client comes and asks to come up with a solution before I have an opportunity to have at least a slight idea on what the subjective field is and what are the pitfalls or something like that. And if you cannot do it quick enough, you will also struggle a lot in this position, because you'll have a lot of attention and a lot of responsibility.
How do you approach that? Like before we go to other sort of key skills, how do you approach this? Actually finding like trying to understand a new problem that is potentially completely foreign with uncertain information under heavy time constraints, which I presume are typically the case.
I think here what really helps me is a mathematical background, because while I was studying, I got used to abstract thinking, abstract problems, and when I have like this new request in a subject field that is completely unknown to me, I just tried to bring it down to some basics without any of the specifics. Because, of course, those specifics do matter, but they matter in the end. At first, you need to understand the core of the problem and bring down to the concepts that you do understand. And then after you do that, you can come up with a solution based on your experience from the previous projects.
So unpacking that, when you speak to people, and you want to come back to those, to those sort of basic building blocks, and you speak to clients, do you often, have a lot of back and forth and asking to sort of unwrap those problems and figure out, or try to really understand and read and only then come back to them.
It's just it's an iterative process. So actually, I do not share those building blocks with the client, because you never want to give an impression that you do not know something in the first meeting, because even though it's normal, a lot of clients they assume that you got everything under control and you do not need anything to be explained. So at first, I just bring down to those concepts and I give a general solution, a general estimation of the project, something like plus minus 30% in terms of cost and time. And then after we get a hold on the client, then I start asking a lot of questions to dig into the details, because obviously this is the key to a successful project, to understand the process that you're trying to work with to its as deep as you can.
Oh, so it's a combination. You start with some thinking about how to put it in a frame that is somehow we can put a number on it in terms of the estimation, and then once the project starts, you try to unwrap whatever you can.
Yeah, because before the project starts, most of the clients they do not share all the information, and a lot of this information is important. So it's really frustrating sometimes when you need to come up with the estimation of a problem that you do not fully understand. So it's sometimes ridiculous when the client did not give you even any data to look at, and he asks you how long it will take to do something. But I also try to understand their side. It's not their field; they do not understand.
Sure.
We put a lot of effort actually talking about the projects, just a little backing up. There is also like this big line we're trying to pursue right now. It's workshops and consultancy sessions with our clients, because one of the hugest problems right now in the data science market in general, that the customers, that people who actually want to implement it, they do not understand it at all. They do not understand where, how to implement it, what is required. This is something that we are trying to work with a lot. And those consultancy sessions, for example, where we come to our clients and we talk about their business processes, and we point out where, in our opinion, something can be done, because they don't know what problems can be solved, what is required. And then after those sessions, usually the future projects are much more productive, because all the things
you start to speak the same language, right?
Yeah. They if we ask something, they understand why we need it. So this is also a really important thing. It helps a lot when you work with somebody.
Yeah, I see. So we have. So wait, like let's come back to those skills. We digressed a bit, but so the first thing you said, is this communication, this sort of presentation, and being outbound, if you will, and being customer facing, if you something like that. Then the second point would be being a good problem solver and trying to put those, trying to really understand the problems that clients are solving and put them in a frame that is, explainable and that you can build upon, because it's never going to be good on the first try. What are the other things that you would say are key to being good at your job?
You need to be, it's real obvious, but I will say it, you need to be responsible. So if you do not take the responsibility, you will not grow. Before I just, I think, it was before I started doing data science in WaveAccess. I went to my boss, and when you go and you want a raise, there are several ways you can approach this stuff. But I think the best way is to ask what you have to do to get a raise, not like when I'm going to get a raise, but what you have to do. And what he's told me is to take more responsibility on the projects, on the development, like taking more actions in terms of the future of the company in general. So like trying to figure out new ways to get customers, to make the projects better, to take responsibility for some tasks more, more personally. So
how did you do that? Like actually, like if you can give me an example, like let's say you're at this moment in your career where, you're solving, problems and you're building those projects, and how did you go about actually getting more of that responsibility? Like, did you actually go out and started looking for clients? Like,
no, of course not. So the first step is when you have some task, for example, you can do it. You can just do this task and finish it, and just give the results and say, okay, this is okay, and just forget about it. But if you take more responsibility, you solve the task as you were suggested to do it. If there is somebody who is your boss or something like that. But then you also try to find out, is this the best way to solve this task? How this task can be done better? Is there any way we can maybe improve the process so all of these tasks that are solved in the future can be solved faster or better? So it's just
have you ever questioned whether the task should be solved at all?
It's a really good point. Sometimes you have to question whether it's worth doing at all. And among people who I'm working with, I try to emphasize that if they have any ideas or any suggestions, maybe if they disagree with something that I come up with the concept and I come up with a plan, but it's not like I came up with a plan and it just goes as I said. Everybody has the opportunity to object. Maybe something seems incorrect. And this is something that you need to do if you want to take more responsibility. Because, well, again, it requires a good boss. Because if your boss is not, how do I say it? If he doesn't recognize that you put more effort, that you feel responsible for that,
doesn't value your input.
Then it won't work. But then you have to find the new boss. Because not all things depend on you. I even though I know that I put a lot of effort in taking this position and into developing our department, but I also know that I just at some point I got lucky. But there is also a saying. I'm not sure how to translate from Russian, but only those who work a lot, they get lucky. Mm-hmm. So
it's not a guarantee, but it's
but if you're just lucky, then some is a come, is a go,
Yeah.
This is an English saying, is a come, is a go. So if you're just lucky, then okay, I got this position, but in half a year I lost it because I didn't work hard enough.
Yeah. No, I think I really like that in English there is this word serendipitous or serendipity, which is like in Polish. I'm not sure if you're Russian, but like in Polish, definitely we don't have that word, and it's this luck that you get when you look for something. So you're looking for something and then you get lucky. So you were actually looking for it and then you get lucky on the way. So like, it's not this sort of just random, but it is random in a way. In many ways it is random, but it just happens as you were, seeking something. So I like that really. And I think it's actually what you were saying. But yeah, like let's get back to this. So we had, definitely, I really like that you said this is taking more responsibility. I think, after all, everyone, if you want to scale your organization, you want to find people that can take this responsibility and build, that they'll just solve problems without your interference. Like that's ultimately how organizations scale. So I 100% agree that taking more responsibility makes a ton of sense. And I really like that you put it in a way where you can start it at that task level and, presumably grow it, to the project level, to a feature level, whatever, and then just go beyond that. Anything else? Like, so we have another thing, responsibility, taking more responsibility.
Definitely. There is one more key thing that in data science it's just a must-have. You always need to look into the state-of-the-art models, state-of-the-art articles and results, because it just becomes outdated so fast. Like when I was talking, if you remember Xander from ML6, so he was told that when he looks at the article, the first thing he looks at is the date. That article. And if the date is more than like 1 or 2 years old, then he probably won't even look at it because there's probably something newer and better.
No, that is true. And it's also quite scary, but it is.
I think there is a reason for that, because data science, machine learning, data science are quite different actually, but machine learning is quite an old discipline. But it was purely academic for quite a long time, just because the computing power wasn't good enough. And then at some point it was good enough, and the field was not investigated at all. There were so many things that could be done, and a lot of money was invested in
started flowing.
And then it became overwhelming when all the things that could have been opened and discovered before, with good financing. It's all being discovered right now at the same time. So because of that, it's really sometimes it's really hard to keep up, and a big part of your job as a head of data science, or even as a team lead, is to be on top, because if you do not keep up, then your team might just continue using what they know. It's not a very good team, but it might happen.
So how do you keep up with that? Like, do you have any tips or tricks or tools that you're using to keep up with the newest research and tools?
Yeah, so actually I follow a bunch of people on Twitter, such as Peter Abel and Jeff Dean, and there are quite a few of them. And they communicate a lot in terms of when they find some new papers that are exciting, that have like a potential to give an impact on the whole data science community. I just look at what they tweet, and I look at those papers. And then there is, of course, Medium. I think probably the best resource you can find on the internet in terms of good and not purely academic articles where you can understand the concepts. You can always go to archive to have a better understanding, but to understand the general concept, Medium usually gives a good impression. Yeah. And there are also a couple of YouTube channels, like 2-minute papers, for example. I really like them because they give like this 2 to 5 minute explanation with visualization from some interesting papers. They take different papers, some of them maybe even 2 or 3 years old, but it's still fun to look, and sometimes I get interesting ideas from that. They actually talked about that the OpenAI, if you know,
sure.
They published the full paper recently about how like their Dota 2 5-on-5 team AI team was working, and it was a really interesting concept. Like this. There is a concept of surgery, performing surgery on the model while it is training.
Got it.
So the game, the training took like 8 to 9 months. So obviously they couldn't start over if they had some new ideas or if the game changed. So they developed this approach where they could introduce some changes into the model without stopping the training process. And then they actually started everything after 9 months. They started the whole process again, and it performed even better, but it allowed them not to begin from scratch each time. So it's just usually you need to pick some resources that you trust and just keep track. I strongly suggest to follow those guys like Jeff D, Andrei Karpatny, Andrew NG, of course, but he doesn't tweet a lot. Mostly it's like some other guys from Google. And
I'm gonna get the list from you later.
Yeah,
for sure. We're gonna share that with people. Okay, so like keeping up. Is there anything else that you would add to that list? Or maybe what's even more interesting to me is, out of those skills and maybe the ones that we missed, which ones were, the most difficult for you to learn, and how did you learn them? How did you approach learning them? So like people that are in this position now can, take some lessons from that.
I think the most important, the most difficult one for me, at least, was to actually scale from a small, like 2, 3, 4 people team to like this bigger unit. Well, I struggled with introducing bureaucracy and administration into our department just because it's sort of against my nature. But at some point, I understood that it is necessary to have a healthy amount of administration because, well, when there is 2 people, or 3 people, 4 people, you can just communicate like one to each other. But as it grows, you need to have some processes that are written down and understood by all the people. And I think it was the most difficult part for me because I am not that kind of guy. I'm more like this, hey, let's do something new. Let's try something some more. But if you do not do it, eventually you'll encounter some projects where, for instance, before when I started managing my time and managing the team in general, there were a lot of cases when I, for example, finished the presentation for the client 1 minute before the presentation actually happened. And it's not something you should look forward to because I was able to finish it, but it was like this much before.
Anything could have happened and you would have had it.
Anything could have happened and you do not want to take those risks. At some point, you need to grow up as a manager. You need to become a manager from a developer. And this is, I think, a very simple mistake to make because most of us, when we start, we are developers. And we just have this task that we perform. And we do not look at the general picture. We do not estimate whether everything goes on time in terms of the whole project. But when you understand this concept that you are no longer a developer, and I'm no longer a developer, I'm more of a manager. I do write code sometimes when sometimes I want to do something myself. I have this idea and I want to check it out myself. Then I do it myself. But usually it's, again, not cost effective because there are so many things else that I need to do. So
like this transition from contributor, from actually coding to managing and setting up the administration, that was tricky. Any things that, like on that, taking that path that you remember that helped you do it and helped you actually, make this transition?
Yeah, it sort of happened by accident because I took a postgrad lately. I finished it a couple of weeks ago, actually. And in the first place, I took it because I strongly believe that in the future, only those data scientists.
What was that postgrad about? What was that?
It was management of companies and teams in general. So
got it.
Very entrepreneur focused. So initially, I started this postgrad to get this idea of how business works, to get the idea how those processes work. I strongly believe that, in maybe, I don't know, 5 is, well, if it really goes fast, but in 10 years, I think only those data scientists who will understand business processes, only they will stay relevant because we all heard of AutoML systems. And right now they're quite wonky and they do not work very well. Well, they work as your basic junior data scientist, I think. So something around that. But as time goes, they will become better. And the only thing that you will be able to contribute is your understanding of how business works, your understanding of how things work in general, something that, goes outside the specific problem. And this is why I went to this postgrad. But while I was on this postgrad, I actually got some knowledge also in terms of management, and I understood a lot of things. It helped me to communicate better with other managers, because the way I was doing things beforehand, some of them had questions with my methods because it wasn't regulated, it wasn't structured, and I understand their frustration right now. And I'm happy that I understand it, because things are much better, because when you have some procedures figured out, everything goes much smoother. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even if it is quite boring to fill out, plans, building like gun diagrams and analysis of the whole process. It's really boring, but it pays off in the end.
Good thing there are now tools for that as well.
yeah, but you still have to figure those things out.
No, for sure. Just joking. Yeah. No, I see a point. I think it's a fair. I would actually extend it a bit, like saying that it's only the understanding of the business. Like at some point we're gonna get to that point, but I think even that there's gonna be this intermediate step where understanding how you want to set up this validation, or what are the metrics you want to use, things like that. Those are going to be very important. Like not even going to the this is of course connected to the problem, but I think it's gonna be very easy to build a very bad model, or a model that is going to be, creating something that seems good, and then it's going to actually cause a ton of trouble for you as soon as it hits the use case, hits the people using it.
Well, as I said, LTML systems usually behave as your regular junior data scientist, and if you put maybe the target variable into the feature space, it won't be able to tell that you did something wrong.
Yeah,
I actually had some cases when interns that came to our company, and they were working with time series. They fed the data from the future to the model. And they got really good results. They were really excited about it. And I looked at it, okay, now you'll have to spend some time and understand what you did wrong.
Yeah, no, there's this funny saying there that it's, it's very difficult to forecast, especially if you don't know the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking about those junior people, and not actually just traders and anyone working in data science and thinking about getting to leading the teams at some point. What are the things that you would tell to the folks out there that you want to? Is there the message or the things that people should focus on in your opinion, and things like that to get better and get better quicker? Some tips, tricks, things. I mean, there's already a lot of content that we have here, but I think you're gonna have some more.
Yeah, there is one more thing. At least one more thing. I do a lot of interviews with new candidates. And, there are a lot of courses, of course. There are courses from Andrew NG, and they are really good. But there are a lot of memes where a person takes some course and then he believes that he's a data scientist. I actually run into those people who come and they didn't try anything themselves outside those courses. While there is Kaggle, of course. I'm not suggesting you to try to take first places, because usually first places are taken by whole teams that are focused on taking those first places and taking the prizes. But you can practice a lot there. And what is more important, you can look at other people's kernels. There are a lot of people who submit their kernels with explanations, with detailed analysis of what they do. And then you can try solving the problem yourself, and then compare the results and look what other people who perform better than you what they did differently. And actually, Kaggle, if you do not have, for example, a data scientist job right now, but you want to have it, it is the closest you can get to actual project without working somewhere on a real one. And those people who submit, you can get a lot of tips and tricks from them that will help you to grow faster as a developer. And at the same time, as I said, you need to think about how to grow as a person in terms of being a leader, problem solver, an example. There is one more thing that I actually didn't talk, but I always emphasize this, that you need to be a decent person, because I understand that what I have right now in terms of my job, and I owe most of it to my CTO, who believed in me at some point and who treated me as a good person. So in our team is, again, there is holistic, the structure of our department, it's quite horizontal. Of course, the final decision is on me, but I do not put myself higher than others, and it's really important that you treat, if you have somebody who is inferior to you,
subordinate, I think. Just your supervisor.
If you are a supervisor over some other person, if you do not behave as a decent person, then you might get a good job, but you will probably be in an environment that is also filled with people.
Toxic.
With toxic people. So you need to remember that you need to be an example, both in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of communication. And you are the one who is setting the standards. So, and you need to do it before you become.
Standard is one thing, but you're building the culture of your department. Do you want to work in, you can build it the way you want to, you can try and, and set an example so that, people that come after, they have, or they have similar culture that you would want your younger self to have. So I agree on that completely. You spoke a bit about, like you said, mentioned knowledge. I'm wondering, are there any resources like books, you mentioned Medium, so like blogs or things like that, that you would particularly recommend for people to read or listen to or watch?
Actually, I think that right now books are getting, on data science, they are getting outdated so fast that I'm not sure that I actually finished a single book on data science completely. I did read some of them, but eventually it comes down to working with specific instruments. We're in a digital age, and right now being able to find something that you need is more important than keeping a complete library in your head. So I will just repeat that you need to look at Medium, look at the articles that are being highlighted by different conferences and the top specialists in our field. And one more thing that is important for all of the developers is to being able to use Google.
It's a useful tool for sure.
There is one more thing. If you do not know something, there is in my department, there is a 30-minute rule.
What's that?
So if somebody has a problem and in 30 minutes he doesn't know how to solve this problem, then he needs to go and ask others for help. It's not like if he cannot solve the problem in 30 minutes, if he cannot think of a solution in 30 minutes, because after that it's just a waste of time.
I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Yes. So you need to be determined to solve something. But if you cannot solve something, you don't need to be afraid to ask for help. There is a fine balance, because if you ask for help all the time, you will not grow as a problem solver. But if you try to solve everything by yourself, you will spend too much time. So I would suggest on work to pursue the 30-minute rule, and in your free time, when you're just trying to grow as a developer or as a person, is to try to solve everything by yourself.
I like that. No, yeah, I'm definitely gonna. I think on some level, I already did. Like, there's this idea where if you present yourself always as, if you don't know something, you always present yourself as, just being frank about it. You just say, I don't know. You're gonna grow the most, right? But you're gonna get the least respect, at least you're gonna get the least recognition, if you will. Like, you can always sort of upsell your skills a bit, right? So by just maybe not mentioning everything you don't know, right? But then you're not gonna grow. So there's always this balance where it's tricky, like you wanna on one hand, always be frank and always say, I don't understand, I don't know it, and I like that when people do it, and I do that. But there is balance here as well, like you can always go a bit too much in that direction.
Yeah, and actually, even being a head of data science, I'm not afraid to tell some of my subordinates that I do not know something if they suggest it, and then ask them to explain it to me, because, there are so many things.
Of course.
As the head of data science, I need to understand computer vision. I need to understand NLP, forecasting.
Like, there's no way to understand each and every one of that deeply.
Yeah, I cannot know all of those fields better than people that focus on
exactly.
That.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And again, I never tell off people if they do not know something. Except if it's only the most basic stuff
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's this level of sort of almost laziness, where you cannot know something. That's of course.
Yeah, you cannot know a new state-of-the-art model architecture for convolutional neural networks, for example. But if you do not know that you need to split your data properly and to evaluate the results on a test data set, then it happens. So people sometimes just do not think about it. And I can see it because I actually had a really funny story about one girl that works in another department, but she does a little bit of NLP. Right now we work together, but she's not in my department actually. And what she did is, when we were working together, she snatched a small amount of the data set from everybody else. And showed it only after we finished, so we can make a final test on the data.
Oh, yeah. That's a good approach. That's really yeah. But that's really good. Like, not to even tell anyone.
Yeah, we didn't even know that there is another part of the data set, and she was a junior developer. So
nice.
It's something like this. It doesn't require you to study some books or resources. It's just common sense that people. There is one more thing. To be a data scientist, you need a lot of common sense.
Yeah, that's true. Or you learn through pain. Like, learning through pain is also valuable. So
data science is pain. I saw also a picture recently that data science is pain, and if somebody tells you differently, they are selling something.
I like that. I think I'm gonna tweet that. So I think we're getting towards the end of this interview. Is there any final message that you wanna leave our listeners with regarding data science or anything else?
I think the most important part is that regardless of whether you're a junior specialist or maybe you're already head of data science, the most important thing is to have fun and to enjoy your work. Because if I strongly oppose those who start doing something because it brings a lot of money or something else. Do what you want and do what you enjoy, and this will bring you success.
Yeah, I like that. I think like hidden behind this is that it's just easier to maintain motivation towards something you like. And you need motivation to learn. You need it. Like for anything that is long term, you're gonna need that. So I agree. But it's a good point. It's a good point. Especially in this fast paced world that we live today. All right. So thank you so much, Vladimir. It was,
thank you too.
Awesome to speak to you. A lot of good ideas. I'm gonna steal some of them. Maybe I'm just gonna cut them out of the interview so that I can keep them for myself. It was really nice speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too.
Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and till next time on Machine Learning That Works, a podcast hosted by Neptune AI.